Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian Gonzalez, and I am glad to have the opportunity to be with you all today to share some market research from our Indago community around this COVID-19 crisis. Um, you know, as many of you have experienced, many supply chain and logistics conferences and client meetings have been canceled as a result of the pandemic. But one of the things that it hasn't canceled is the importance and the need for supply chain logistics practitioners to continue to learn and to continue to share insights and advice on not only what's happening in the world and in the world of right now in terms of responding to COVID-19, but really on an ongoing basis around everything that's happening in the world of supply chain and logistics. So I'm honored to have the opportunity to share with you, some of the insights from our Indago community around what's happening in COVID-19. Even though we're still kind of in the midst of this, I think sharing some of the research results from the surveys we've done over the past few weeks, at a minimum, will help you, stir some conversation within your organizations or some ideas that you may want to follow up on. So this research cast is really meant to, be relatively short and you really just provide you with some data and some insights, again, to stir up some conversations, some ideas as you navigate through this crisis and beyond. So let me go over a little bit about kind of the game plan or the agenda for today. So I put together a few slides that come from several of the surveys that we've done from the end of February through the end of April that relate to what's happening with regards to COVID-19. And these all come from our Indago research community. Before we get started, let me give you a little bit of background about Indago. It's a research community of supply chain and logistics practitioners. We've got about close to 70 members right now. These are all manager level and above executives in the world of supply chain and logistics from a variety of different companies. So almost 70 members representing almost 70 companies. To be a member of Indago, you actually have to apply, and we actually validate that. If you say you're the VP of transportation or the chief supply chain officer of XYZ company, that you really are that person. So you can't apply with a Gmail address or a Hotmail address. You actually have to apply with your work address. And if you have a LinkedIn profile, we ask that you provide that as well. So even though our community is relatively small right now and growing, it is a high quality community because everyone that's part of it has been validated, if you will. It's free to join if you're a practitioner to be part of our community. It's confidential, so we don't disclose any information about our members. And in fact, none of the members know who each other are. So it really is a very confidential type of platform. And it's the time investment is minimal, about 4 minutes maximum per week. So we send out a short survey, what we call a micro survey, every Monday. And by Friday, everyone gets the results, and then on Monday we do it all over again with a different question. And our tagline is "Be Uncommon, Research with Purpose." And the reason for that is that all of our members actually earn money for every survey that they take. And then when they reach $25, we've aligned ourselves with 5 different charities. And when our members apply, they select which charity they want their earnings to go towards. So right now we've donated over $3,000 to the charities that you see listed here. So the results I'm going to show are from surveys that we conducted with our Indago community, again, from the end of February through the end of April on topics that relate to to the COVID-19 crisis. So one of the first questions we asked our community back at the end of March is, in response to this coronavirus pandemic, what type of changes do you believe your company, will take in how it designs and operates its supply chain? And, about 41% of the member respondents said that they expect that their companies will take many to extreme changes, following, the pandemic, with another 22% expecting, moderate changes. So again, I think, the key takeaway here is, I think for a lot of companies today, they expect some change to come out of this, pandemic to their supply chain operations. Now, we did ask, where do you see potentially some of the biggest areas for, changes? And I think, not surprising, risk management processes was by far the response that came up on top, with 63% of the respondents picking that as the area that they expect the most changes to occur. And that's not surprising, because I think this is an area, I know on Talking Logistics, we've written about this for many years. This is an area that a lot of companies historically have fallen short on. For a lot of companies, risk management was something that they reacted to, right? So whether it was a tsunami or an earthquake or a supplier failure, and basically they would put together a team, do a postmortem, put together some ideas or recommendations of what to do if something like this happened next time. They would put all those ideas and findings in a report and put it in a binder and put it on the shelf and basically really forget about it. And I think, the leading companies are really treat risk management as an ongoing business process, as an ongoing supply chain process. So I think that's going to be one of the key things that's going to happen as a result of this pandemic, is I think more and more companies are going to really look at their risk management, supply chain risk management processes, and really make that more of an ongoing business process as opposed to a project reactionary, type of project. The other two things that kind of rose to the top were sourcing strategy and human resources policies. So on the sourcing side, obviously companies that were affected with China closing early, they saw their supply chains disrupted if they weren't able to get materials from China. We see this right now in the healthcare community with some of the challenges around getting, personal protective equipment, and disruptions in the whole healthcare community. So I think a lot of companies are going to take a step back and really evaluate their strategy in terms of where they source material from, where they manufacture from, particularly if they're single sourced in any particular area. And then on the human resources side, and I'll talk a little bit about this soon, is obviously a lot of companies are working from home now. And if that's going to be something that's going to be more common in the future, thinking through the human resources policies around that is something that's, I think a lot of companies are going to be focused on. So one of the great things about our surveys is that not only do we get quantitative information, but I think what's even more valuable to me are the qualitative comments that we get from our members. So I picked this quote from one of our members from this survey to kind of illustrate kind of the general thoughts that I think our members were expressing relative to this question. So I'll just read the quote here. I expect companies will make significant changes as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Short-term responses will be in areas such as inventory management, mostly increasing of safety stocks and less reliance on just-in-time replenishment, and increasing IT capabilities to enable a remote workforce. Longer-term responses will include more comprehensive supply chain risk management, supplier diversification at a strategic level, and new human resources policies to support a transition to remote working. So I think this quote really summed it up nicely in terms of where our members are today, in terms of thinking about the types of changes that this crisis will ultimately bring forth from a supply chain perspective. So then we asked, at the end of April, we asked, how many of our members are working from home, managing their supply chains from home. And 82% of our members, as of the end of April, were working from home, which I guess is not surprising, considering many states have gone to shelter-in-place policies in place and so forth. Now, again, it's important to note, as many of our members did, that for white-collar professionals, which many of them fall into, it's relatively easy for them to work from home, but they have many of their colleagues who work on the front lines, warehousing, transportation, manufacturing. Many of their colleagues are actually on the front lines and working back at their facilities. So that was kind of a reality, is that from a management standpoint and an executive standpoint, they can work from home, but a lot of the frontline workers that are actually getting product out the door and manufacturing the products, those folks, if their businesses were still open, those folks are still in the front lines. But again, I thought it was very interesting to see that many supply chains out there right now, from a management standpoint, are being managed from home. So we asked, the next common basic question is, well, do you feel you're being more productive, less productive, or equally productive working from home than you would be at the office? And it was kind of a split decision here. About the same percentage, 39% each, said that they either were equally productive as they are in the office, or less productive as they are in the office. With the balance, 22% saying that they're actually more productive than they are in the office. And then we asked, so what are some of the challenges that you're experiencing in working from home? And by far, the number one response is communicating and collaborating with colleagues. And if you read through the comments, I think a lot of the comments were related to the fact that whereas, when they're in the office, they can simply walk to somebody's office and tap them on the shoulder and ask a quick question and get a response. Now they're really, having to send emails or instant messages or have to get on Zoom webcasts and so forth to get stuff done. And they find this kind of new way of communicating, collaborating with colleagues, a little bit more, constraining, a little bit more challenging, adding more friction to the process. So I think by far that is the number one thing that, a lot of the folks in our community are struggling with. As you would expect, others said, distraction from kids and others at home, and then, some home technology issues, having, hiccups with their Wi-Fi or internet connection. But I thought it was kind of interesting that, I thought the distractions at home would be the number one thing, but it's actually, the challenges in communicating and collaborating with colleagues that came out on top here. And again, just to highlight a couple of member quotes to kind of add a little bit more color to this survey question. So I'll read them both here. One of them said, communication is definitely a challenge. Although pre-COVID communication challenges existed, it is exacerbated now that you aren't able to navigate face-to-face nonverbal reactions or expressions during a call. In addition, now that we rely even more on emails, which didn't seem possible, time is wasted sending, waiting, and responding. And then another individual said, I work for an organization that historically hasn't embraced remote working. Not too surprisingly, with 100% of our home office supply chain team working remotely, the business continues to run without interruption. This experience will likely lead to more flexibility for home office team members after the COVID crisis. So again, I think if you take that comment and these results and you equate it and you link it back to the previous survey about human resources policies, I think you're seeing there, some connection there in terms of, I think a lot of folks are going to see, some of the benefits of working from home and provide that flexibility for employees who can and want to. And I think that's going to become more of the norm. Then we asked the question, this was going back to the end of February, but it relates to, some of the challenges that companies are facing with this pandemic. And it was around supply chain mapping. And we asked, do you know where the manufacturing or production facilities of your suppliers are physically located? That is the city, state, and country. And not surprising, I guess, for tier one suppliers, 78% of our respondents said that they know where the production or production facilities of their tier one suppliers are. But not surprising, as you then went to tier two and tier three, you saw those percentages, go down. And, for tier three suppliers, that had the highest percentage of, I don't know where any facilities are located responses with 30%. So I think this is something that we've known in the industry for a long time, that once you get past tier one, a lot of companies really don't have good visibility to their tier two, tier three suppliers in terms of who those suppliers are and where their facilities are located. We also asked a related question, which was, do you know which specific parts or materials are produced at each supplier facility? So not only do you know, the first question was, do you know where their facilities are physically located? This one is really asking, do you know what's actually produced at each of those facilities? And again, not surprising, you saw higher response rates for tier one and less response rates for tier two and tier three. But here you saw the percentages, relatively speaking, lower, right? So more companies know where the facilities are located, but they don't necessarily, but fewer companies know what's actually produced or, manufactured in those facilities. So again, I think this is one of those areas that's going to have to change. And it's one of those areas that needs to be improved moving forward in order for companies to, from a risk management standpoint, to be as prepared as possible to respond to any future disruptions to supply chains, out there, because not having this visibility to their extended supply chain is really constraining their ability, to find alternate sources of supply, and to really understand how to best navigate and respond to, these changes taking place. And again, here's a quote from one of our members related to this. We know precisely where our local suppliers are located in the countries of the next supplier upstream. Suppliers further upstream are rarely known with certainty. We have not engaged in any mapping exercises to date. Unfortunately, most supplier locations in our ERP are office addresses, and often not the location where product is actually manufactured or sourced. So I thought that was an interesting insight that, for a lot of companies, and this might be the case for you, is that the address, the location you have might be a corporate headquarters or a regional office, and it may not be the actual physical location of that plant or that sourcing location. So just looking at the data that you have within your ERP system, and verifying, what exactly is that address, I think is an important first step, even just to see, to create a benchmark or create a baseline, if you will, of where you are today with regards to supply chain mapping. And then finally, we asked a question about helping suppliers. We asked, are you actively helping your suppliers and or seeking help from suppliers, from your customers, I should say, to weather through this COVID-19 crisis? And 29% said that they're actively helping their suppliers, and 5% said that we're actively seeking help from our customers, and then 14% said that they're doing both. But again, the results here were fairly mixed. Those that were actively helping their suppliers are really doing two things. One is they were paying them up front, for orders that already are on the book. So in other words, they weren't canceling orders that were already in place. And number two, they were relaxing some of the service requirements, providing more of a flexibility around on time and full, for example, or delivery dates and so forth. So those are the two main things that those that reported that they were helping their suppliers were doing. But I think here, a lot of companies, a lot of our members at least, we're having we're challenged in terms of how to respond to this current crisis with regard to their suppliers and their customers. As one member said, balancing this all out, who helps who, is a challenging endeavor. Keeping in front of one's own challenges is generally time consuming in and of itself, right? And then another member said, interestingly, our experience has been that both our customers and our suppliers are asking us for help, which is not a very good situation to be in. This request for help generally comes in the form of payment terms. Our suppliers are asking for shorter payment terms and sometimes even cash in advance. And our customers are asking for longer, sometimes significantly longer payment terms. So again, I think the bottom line is here, is that, on the one hand, you can say, well, it's every company for itself. On the other hand, you can say, well, we're all in this together, but trying to find the balance between those two things is proving to be a challenge for at least our members and probably for many other companies as well. So as a way to summarize, this coronavirus pandemic will lead to changes in how companies design and manage their supply chains. We still don't know exactly how, but I think most of our members believe that some changes will come about, certainly in the areas of risk management, in sourcing strategy, and in human resources. Those are the things that came out on top. Related to human resources, working from home will become more common for supply chain practitioners, for those who can and want to, moving forward. So this will not only have implications from a human resources standpoint, but also from an IT standpoint, providing the ability for supply chain practitioners to be able to access their supply chain applications from home or other places and do so in a reliable and secure way. Third, companies still have limited visibility to beyond their tier one suppliers, and this is constraining their ability to respond effectively to these types of disruptions. So companies will need to invest in supply chain mapping, moving forward. And then finally, balancing internal needs, objectives to get through this crisis with those of suppliers and customers is an ongoing challenge. I think those that try to find that right balance, because obviously we all know that supply chains are interconnected, and if you've got a key supplier that fails or goes under, or you have a key customer that fails or goes under, that's going to have an impact on your company as well. So I think at least on paper, at least theoretically, it's in everybody's best interest to try to help each other, but really trying to truly walk the talk on collaboration and helping each other out, I think is a challenging in these times. So hopefully you found this information helpful. Hopefully it stirs up some ideas and some conversation within your organizations. If you've got any questions about any of the research results, or if you're interested in receiving copies of the actual reports, feel free to contact us. You can send an email to membership@joinindago.com and reference that you participated in today's ResearchCast, and we'll be happy to send that to you. Also invite you to learn more about Indago and become a member. Like I said, there's no cost to join, minimal time investment, it's confidential, and you'll help make a difference by supporting a variety of charities that we're aligned with. So you can go to joinindago.com to learn more. Again, thank you for the opportunity to present to you today, and look forward to sharing more insights and research results in a future ResearchCast. Thank you.